Hello, my Rockworld fans. Today we are sitting at the Tegernsee in a very nice coffee with the drum legend Pete York, which is the founding member, one of the founding members of the Spencer Davis Group. And they are just right now on their 50th anniversary tour, the Spencer Davis Group in Germany. And so welcome, Pete.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's great to be talking to you.
Pete, as we all know, the band started in 1964, the Spencer Davis Group, but because that were so much changing times, give us a little overview how everything has started with you and with the other guys, with Steve Winwood, Muff Winwood and Spencer, how you come together, and who choose the name and why you choose the name Spencer Davis Group.
Okay. Right, well, we started really, and I think I met Spencer. Spencer came to my 21st birthday party, so it's before 1963. I already knew him, and I was working, trying to become a big man in business in Birmingham, and I was training, and I used to go to Birmingham University sometimes to do special things, but I wasn't a university student. And the university had a jazz club which was called the University Rhythm Club, and Spencer Davis was the secretary at the time, and was also playing the 12-string, mostly 12-string guitar, and he had a harmonica around his neck on a harness, so he could play it, and he would play harmonica and 12-string and sing Lead Belly and Big Bill Broonzy and all those blues things. And I used to play sometimes with the University Jazz Band, and Spencer would get up on the stage with us and sing. He used to sing a song called I Wish I Could Shimmy Like My Sister Kate, for example. That's a famous old song. And some old blues things, And so that's how we really got to know each other. And at the same time, I was playing with a lot of other Birmingham bands, anybody who would have me, And there was a band around called the Muff Woody Jazzmen, which was Muff Winwood. And Muff at the time was playing rhythm guitar, and his little brother Steve was playing piano, only piano. And I went and sat in with this band sometimes played shows when their drummer couldn't make it. And I thought the music that they played was amazing, really. We were all young guys, aged sort of 21 or so, and Muff had arrangements for this little Muff Woody Jazz band, but really good things to play, it was great. So we all knew each other in a way. And then Spencer got offered the chance to play every Monday night at the Golden Eagle pub in Birmingham, near the town hall, which is kind of important later. And we started to do this Monday night club because he was allowed to choose his own band. He didn't have a band then, he was just Spencer Davis, soloist, So he got us to play with him because he knew us all. And so we started these Monday night sessions. And sometimes we had some horn players came along and played as well. It was quite jazzy. We've always been quite jazzy, and it began to get really successful in a very short period of time. In fact, I can say that the first time we ever featured on television, either me personally or any of the other members of the band, was when the BBC got to hear about the queues around to get into the club when we started playing. There were queues around the block.
Wow.
So they came down with a film crew to film the queue going into
because
see
so much
our
people
show.
were there, yeah.
And people were turned away, they couldn't get them all in. And so this became news,
Cool.
What is this band? Who is this band who is drawing every Monday night? This place is absolutely packed, So it got to be quite interesting. And then at the same time, this is before we were professional, we were semi-pro. I was working in my company, Spencer was at university, Steve was at school.
Yeah, because he was just 16 or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then there came a concert to Birmingham Town Hall, which, as I said, was only a few steps away. And on this concert was a Jamaican girl called Millie Small, and she had a record called My Boy Lollipop.
Yes,
which was a hit.
Everybody
At
knows
that time, it was a hit. And she was, which we found out later, was a very sweet girl. And her manager was Chris Blackwell.
Oh.
And he had come up to Birmingham with her to see the show. And we had a guy called Dave Postle, very nice guy, who sort of managed us at the time. Not really, but, he wanted to be our manager. So he helped us with things. And he went up to Birmingham Town Hall and managed to get hold of Chris Blackwell backstage, and he said, I think you should come 50 metres down the road to this pub and see the Spencer Davis group. He said, because I think you'll be surprised. So anyway, Blackwell did come down, and as he came up the stairs, he heard us playing, and he said, I want this band. He hadn't even seen us, but he could hear us through the door.
Cool.
And he said, I want this band, you know. And so he came in and saw us, and that's how we became. There were actually two other managers who wanted to sign us up at that time. The famous Giorgio Gamelski, who was a kind of pirate figure at the time, and Mike Vernon, I think he wanted us as well. But anyway, we settled on Blackwell, and we went with Blackwell and Island Records. We signed with Island Records, and we made that first single, which was Dimples. And Dimples came out in the spring of '64, and we all stopped our jobs, and Steve stopped going to school, and we became professional musicians, April '64.
As the Spencer Davis Group?
As the Spencer Davis Group.
And how the name come to Spencer Davis?
Well, before that, we'd been called things like Spencer Davis Rhythm and Blues Quartet, or sometimes just the Rhythm and Blues Quartet. It was a cooperative band, which meant there was not actually a leader who said, okay, this is the way everything is, and I buy the equipment, and so on and so forth. We all shared in everything. If we bought a PA system, which we had to, of course, we all paid for it. And we sat round one day in Blackwell's office trying to think of a name for the band, and this went on all afternoon, trying to think of crazy, stupid names, you know, like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. We were trying to think of a name like that, and nobody could think of anything which we all liked. And so Muff said, because Muff was getting a little, I remember it this way anyway, Muff said, he said, let's call it the Spencer Davis Group, because Spencer Davis is a good name. He brought us all together. It sounds like an interesting name, you know. And so the Spencer Davis Group, you see. And so we all, he wanted to go and meet his girlfriend. That's why he wanted to stop the meeting, see.
So it was a very quick choice because
so we
of
all,
that.
yeah, why not, you know. Because the funny thing is, whatever happens to you, even when you choose the name of your band, or you choose the song you're going to make for your first record, those sort of things you're thinking about, where you're going to play next week, you never think that we would still be talking about it 50 years later.
That's it. Nobody thought about that
at the time.
Yes.
That it will happen. You hope it might be successful, and you think, well, it's going to be fun for a while, but I never would have believed that we'd be sitting here now, me in Germany, for example, talking about this band and saying, okay, we're going to be playing gigs in a little while, you know.
This is crazy. This is really crazy.
It's crazy, but
because
of course
there were a lot
it's
of, but these were the times, and let's go just a little bit back to the beginning. You brought out the first record, Dimples, and then you did the first LP, and then so what is written? There were a lot of shows and a lot of concerts, and a very fast success, and you did a lot of #1 records in a very little time. Let's say about 2 to 4 years.
In '66 we brought out, well, almost, I mean, actually between 64, 65 we had the first #1, which was Keep On Running.
Yes.
And going up to that #1, after going up to the #1, we'd released, I think, 3 singles before #1 before Keep On Running got to be #1. And then after Keep On Running came Somebody Help Me, When I Come Home, Give Me Some Lovin', all before the end of '66.
Yes.
So that's from Christmas '65 with Keep On Running to Christmas '66, we had 4 singles in the charts.
So you started out as a rhythm and blues band.
That's what we thought we were, was rhythm and blues.
But you changed very fast to pop stars.
Yeah.
So how was that for you to be a pop star?
Well, it was great because, of course, all the things happened that everybody knows happens to pop stars. You know, people recognise you walking down the street. Girls throw themselves in front of you and want to know you, so to speak. So all of these things, this was all great. And you have a fan club. You know, we had a fan club and a fan club secretary. All the things that pop groups had. Although I still maintain, I think the others would agree, we were a pop group because we were popular, but we still had the mentality of a rhythm and blues band,
Yes.
which I think you could say about the Rolling Stones.
That's the same.
Although they became huge,
Yeah.
they always thought of themselves
Yeah.
as a rhythm and blues band.
Yeah.
You know.
As we know, you are a friend of a lot of other musicians and played also with them, Rolling Stones, Eric
Yeah.
Clapton, and everything. I think you played with in the first Powerhouse Eric Clapton
I
band.
did, yes. I played
And-
played on the. There was a recording session
Yeah.
actually when Eric. The Powerhouse was only a recording session. It was a recording band, but it was a great thing at the time. But we all knew each other and we were all friends. So when I say that there was Eric Clapton, Steve Winwood, Jack Bruce, Paul Jones, me, and a guy called Ben Palmer, who I think was a friend of Jack's, I think, yeah. And that was the band, you know.
Yeah.
And they're all they're all legendary names now, and sadly some of them have gone, you know, like Jack, which is very sad. But we never thought about it like that. It was a band. Eric needed some musicians who could play that music, knew how to play
That's it,
those
yes.
things, that Chicago blues.
Yeah.
And so we all did, oh yeah, we'll come along and play. And we were in the studio for maybe 3 hours. And that was it. I think we cut 4 tracks, which is the ones you can still find somewhere on Eric's history CDs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's go back to the Spencer Davis group.
Yeah.
So you toured a lot, not just in England. You toured in Europe. You toured also in America. I don't know.
Yes, we didn't go to America, and this was we could never understand really why Blackwell planned it this way. But we had offers to go to America right from the first hits.
Okay.
But we were always told that Blackwell's policy was to hold us back until we could go over really big. But then, of course, Steve left in spring '67 after I'm a Man. He left and went off to think about his music, as they say, in the cottage in the country, and then later came up with Traffic.
Yes.
So suddenly the original band was split, but of course we carried on.
But
Another
Muff
lineup.
Winwood was still in the band.
No, Muff Winwood left along the same time as Steve.
Okay.
Because he said, I don't want to be in it if Steve's not in it.
And then Eddie Hardin came
Yeah.
into.
And another guy came in
Yeah.
at the time, yeah. So that was how that all changed over. But it was it all happened very quickly. They do say there's a collection on CD of the recordings we made with the original band.
Yes.
All of them.
Yes.
And there's 43 tracks.
Yes.
So you could say that in that 2-year period,
Yes.
roughly, we made about 42 tracks.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any. We did other things on the stage,
Yes.
which have actually never been recorded.
Yes.
We did some, a little far out things. We did Sister Sadie, which was a straight jazz tune.
Okay.
But we used to do things like that on the stage. I used to sing 2 comedy songs
Okay.
in the Spencer Davis show.
Okay.
With funny words, and I clowned around and did stupid things, Steve played the piano for me. And so those were never recorded, obviously. But so those 43 tracks became the Spencer Davis Group kind of historic.
And of these 43 tracks, I think there are how much number ones? 5, 6, 7?
5.
5 number ones, but a lot of top 10 hits.
Yes, some of them did, and you've got to remember that in those days, EPs, which had 4 tracks on
Yes.
them, and the albums, which usually had about 12 tracks
Yes.
on them, they also sold 1 million copies.
Yes.
So there was a chart for LPs, and if you were top of the LP charts, that meant you were selling 1 million albums.
Which is unbelievable
Yeah.
nowadays, because
Yeah.
nowadays you sell maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
So it's really
Yeah.
a difference. We spoke about Eddie Hardin, and everybody knows that Eddie Hardin and you had a very popular band after you left the Spencer Davis group with him, which is called Hardin and York.
Yeah.
But Eddie Hardin came into the band, and after some time you both leave the Spencer
Yes,
Davis
we
group,
did.
or what is the
We
background for
left.
that?
Well, Eddie and I, we got to know each other in the Spencer Davis Group.
Yeah.
I didn't find Eddie. I wasn't out looking for anybody particularly. Spencer was doing that with the the next manager that he had, a guy called John Martin, and they were looking for people.
Yes.
And one of the people who was recommended by Long John Baldry, as far as I know,
Oh, cool.
was Eddie, because Eddie was already in a band in South London, and also very young, like Steve was. But Eddie actually had a Hammond organ,
Yeah.
and was singing, had a voice much like you hear. Well, you can hear them now on the recordings, because
Yeah.
he sang some leads on the Spencer Davis recordings, and it was a very good voice with a lot of feeling, like Steve's was, and of course he was a very good organ player. So we got together inside the Spencer Davis group, and we were messing around one day, for example, and playing a tune. He always he loved Beatles things.
Yes.
Eddie, you know, he became a friend of Ringo's later anyway.
Yeah.
So he loved Beatles stuff, and he was messing around with, I think it started out with Lady Madonna, and we were playing Lady Madonna and jamming in the afternoon before a show.
Just you two?
Yeah, just the two of us.
Yeah.
Nobody else was there.
Yeah.
So we're just playing. He's playing the bass pedals.
Yeah.
So we start playing this, and then he started to play Norwegian Wood, and I changed the rhythm behind it, and so on and so forth. And before we knew it, we had a very interesting piece worked out with Lady Madonna and Norwegian Wood mixed up together, changing, going from one to the other, and so on. So we said to Spencer, "Can we put this into the Spencer Davis show?" And I said, "Then you can go off and have a cup of tea," you know, which is what they did. So we put this in, and we put that into the show. The first time we went to America as the Spencer Davis group had Eddie in it, and Phil Sawyer was playing the guitar.
Okay.
Phil, also a very good guitar player, very nice guy to be around, funny guy. And so Phil and Spencer would go off, and Eddie and I would do this. Sometimes it went on for 15 minutes, this Lady Madonna Norwegian Wood. And that was the first time I started to play drum solos on stage.
Ah, okay.
Was then.
You didn't do it before in the
No,
Spencer
I used
Davis
to play
group?
breaks.
Okay.
You know, like short breaks and maybe a chorus or something, but never a 5
never
minutes.
really
one of those things.
Yeah.
But you see, remember this: a big thing happened to me in 1966.
Yes.
Because in 1966, when we were doing very well with our records, Buddy Rich came to visit England for the first time. We'd never seen him. And he came over, and we thought, well, this is a guy who really can play.
And Buddy Rich is the top star of all drummers, as we know.
So I thought, gosh, I wish I could do that. So then I started to try. And that's when I actually, 66 was when I started to really start practicing on the drums, try to get better, you know. Everything else I did before that, I was doing it naturally. So
Yes.
I think I play in a natural way, but I thought, my technique is not good enough, you know, I need to play better. So I started to study in 66.
Oh, cool, this is cool.
And practice more.
Yeah.
And I took and you know, the practice pad, which is the thing that drummers play on, the rubber pad, you know, very well, you know.
I know it and I hate it.
Yeah, but the one I bought was called the Ludwig Billy Gladstone pad, and I bought it in 66 because I wanted to learn more, and I've still got it. It's still with me in the house today. I still take it everywhere on the road, the same pad.
And what you told me in another interview we had a long time ago, you still practice every day.
Yeah.
Which is a drummer needs to practice every day his whole life.
I think so. I do anyway. Some drummers I know, there's some guys who say, "Oh, I never practice. I'm just a natural." I don't believe it. I tell you what, I found out later. Buddy Rich used to say that. He said, "I never practice. I don't have drums around the house. I never practice." Louis Belson told me that they practice together.
For that's it. Okay, then we have the thing with the Spencer Davis group. We have the founding of Eddie Hardin.
So we have the reason why Hardin and York began was because the success of this Lady Madonna. People really were surprised by it. First of all, they said, "Unbelievable that two people can sound so big."
Yeah, it was called the smallest big band
in the world's smallest big band.
The world's smallest big band.
Yeah, and that stuck with me all through the years. The fact that if you can't afford a big band, which most of the time I can't, a Hammond organ is the next best thing.
Cool. And then you split with us with Eddie and left the Spencer Davis group, and then you did some years with Eddie Hardin as Hardin and York, and you played with Deep Purple and other big names.
Quite quickly Eddie and I got together. I think I'd been out of Eddie and I left the Spencer Davis group for slightly different reasons. but we were always friends.
Yes.
So we telephoned each other, and one day Eddie said, "Why don't you come over to the house and play in South London where he lived? Had a big Hammond organ, had a drum set there and everything." So I went over and jammed with him for 3 or 4 hours, and we started to jam, and we found that things came very easily, because when you work only 2 people,
Yes.
the organist, who's really the orchestra, he starts to play, so he's the music. All I have to do is listen to where he's playing. We knew each other so well, I could, when he played something, I could imagine where he'd go next.
Yeah.
You know, so in fact it sounded like we'd arranged things, but it wasn't that. It sounded, because we were so tight.
It was very much improvisation.
I knew where he was going.
Understand, because you played so long together, and you're so tight together.
It sounded like a big band, you know. So I knew when he played a riff, I knew how it was going to finish up.
So as we spoke at the beginning, now is the 50th anniversary of the Spencer Davis Group, and there's a tour now in Germany. And maybe later also in other countries. And the original members, you, Pete York, and Spencer Davis, and also Eddie Hardin, the later Spencer Davis member, is joining. What songs can we expect on the tour? Just the Spencer Davis songs, or will there be also that Hardin and York thing again?
There will. In fact,
so it's just 2 concerts in one.
I don't know whether. I hope they put this on the posters, because I asked the agency to put this on the posters. I said, make it the Spencer Davis Group featuring Hardin and York, because Hardin and York, we didn't make that. We did make a couple of singles with Eddie Hardin, but mostly we made albums.
Yes.
And as you know, I think we made 3 albums or 4 albums. One of them was a black album, by the way, a black market album.
The live one.
Yeah. But 3 of them were legitimate albums, and all 3 of those went gold.
Yes, I know.
Which means a lot
and
of sales.
Very good. Yeah.
So, you know, Hardin and York was a very big thing, especially here in Germany. Well, I've always been grateful to Germany, because, you know, people always accepted us here, and I feel that's why I feel at home here now. You know, I'm going to finish my life here after all. You know, here in this country.
So the show will be all the big hits from Spencer Davis,
Spencer Davis hits,
but
some other
also
Spencer Davis
Hardin and York.
Yes, yeah.
Very cool. Pete, what were your music heroes and brought you to start into your music career? What were your heroes? Were there drummers, or were there singers, or why you start playing drums, and where were your heroes at that time?
Well, I listened when I guess around about 10 years old. I can remember the house where we lived in at age 10. And in this house, funnily enough, we had a funny little bell, which my mother must have found somewhere in maybe an antique shop. And it was the kind of brass bell that you punch on the top, and it goes ting, like you get in a hotel reception to get somebody to come.
And you did it every day.
Well, this bell was in the house. I loved listening to the radio. We only had a radio then. There was no gramophone, so we didn't have a record player. So there was just a radio, and I'm 10 years old, and I would fiddle around with the radio, and I'd hear music, and I would find some music which I liked, and without really knowing what it was always either American jazz or a British sort of copy of it. And then I would take a pencil and I would hit that bell, and I would sit there going ting, 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 just trying to keep time with it. I didn't know why, or I certainly didn't know what I was doing, but I just liked the idea because I could play along with the band, you know, and keep the time. I felt I was inside the band. And then I began to collect a few more little stupid things, little tiny toy drums, and little things which would make a noise. And so then I had this array of stuff on the table, and I put the radio on it, making all this noise. My father would get very angry, but my mother said, "Oh, you must let him do it. He likes to do this, so he likes music, which is a good thing." My mother always encouraged me. She wanted me to play the clarinet, so eventually we got a wind-up gramophone, you know, a record player. In
the old style.
In the old style, a 78.
Yeah, you have to put it on.
Yeah, with shellac records, you know, the old records. So, and then she bought me records by the clarinet player that she knew was a great clarinet player, which was Benny Goodman. So she bought me Benny Goodman records. Yeah. So I start listening to these records, and then I suddenly hear in the middle of this these drums.
Yes.
You know, rang dang, and it was Gene Krupa.
Yeah.
So I thought, I like that. You know, this was the clarinet seems much too difficult.
But the drummer makes really noise.
So that's how that started, actually. So I would say that a very big influence was swing music, actually. Yes. The idea of that, and we could find that on British radio anyway. There was a few programs in the week where they featured this kind of music. Because bear in mind, if I'm 10 years old, it's 1952.
Yes.
And it's really before rock and roll.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
You know, it's about 3 years later that Bill Haley arrives.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I think Joe Turner was already.
Joe Turner.
But they don't let him because Joe Turner did the shake, rattle, and roll things and everything. It was rock and roll.
And let's face it, Joe Turner was black.
And Joe Turner was black, so they needed a white rock and roll guy.
I mean, as we well know, because we love the music, the real great stuff was happening, for example, in the Apollo Theatre in Harlem, which was basically a black theatre, and they were getting sold out, you know, with people who were doing, as you say, I'm a big Joe Turner fan as well, and I think that what he did, and there were many other black entertainers at the time, and I have a recording at home by a guy called Hot Lips Page, who was a great singer. He was also a trumpet player. And Hot Lips Page made a record in about 1939 where he sings the words rock and roll together.
Yeah.
Together. They appear in a lyric. So the name was nothing new. Nobody, when Alan Freed or somebody says, I invented rock and roll, that's bollocks. The black people were using that all the time, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we know where that came from. So that's how I listened to the music, and then I got a better a snare drum was a bit better quality, and I gradually built up my drums through my school years, going through 14, 15, 16, and I went to a school when I was 14, which was a private school, where you did military training. It was there was what we call a cadet force.
This is what all the great jazz drummers did.
I think so.
Everybody started in the military style because all these kind of the paradiddles. You get the feeling for that.
That's right. Because all those guys. You know, I just talked about Gene Krupa. These guys were very rudimental drummers. They were playing the rudiments. Buddy Rich, all these guys, great technicians. You know, and it's all drums have those military rudiments, the famous 26 rudiments. And I had in our military band in the school, there was an ex-Royal Marines bandmaster who showed us what to do, and he was great, a very nice man, really nice man, a tough guy. He'd been in the war and the whole thing, but he showed me how to play these things, you know. And because he saw that I was more interested than most boys.
Yes.
Most boys were just doing it. Oh, that looks fun. Play the drum. But I was listening to drummers on record. I like to. I'd take my drum away somewhere in some corner of the school, put my records on, and play along with it. You know, and then we had a jazz club at the school where we tried to play some jazz. You know, some of us, and so that was going on. And then by the time I came out at 18 of school. I could play a bit, you know. I could play better than most people my age at that point. So then when I went to Birmingham and got a job and started proper work, let's say, and as it happened, very luckily, the guy I sat next to in the office at the working place, which was actually a screw factory making screws and nuts and bolts in Birmingham, one day we were talking about music and I mentioned some jazz name and he said, "Oh, you know him?" I said, "Of course. I have records and everything." "Oh, do you?" "Yeah, I have too also." So then, you know, we got together and then we'd get together, listen to records, go to concerts. And, you know, the beautiful thing about that time was that there was so much live music.
Yes.
In concerts, in clubs, you could go out and see people. And if I say that in that period when I was a teenager, every year, at least once a year, Count Basie would come to town with his big band.
So
Birmingham.
You could listen to all that musicians.
Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong.
Wow, yeah.
You know, these are all heroes.
Yeah.
Dave Brubeck.
Yeah.
Art Blakey, Joe Jones, all these.
Yeah.
I saw all the big drummers.
Yeah.
The only one I didn't see, funny enough, live, never saw him live, sadly, was Gene Krupa. The one I would have really liked to have seen live.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. But anyway, luckily, with all of these people, there's plenty of film to see, so you can see them. You see how they
That's
work.
right. Yes.
So that was really my beginnings, my inspirations, I still say it's strange after 50 years.
Yes.
My biggest heroes are still the ones I started with, and I think many of us can say that. You know,
I think so.
If you started with the Beatles,
Yes.
the Beatles, you're still your heroes.
That's it.
You know, for me, it was Armstrong, Ellington, Basie. I would say Goodman, maybe.
Cool. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give a 20-year-old version of yourself trying to start into music now?
Learn the piano. I would say because that's the one really thing I regret
That
I don't know enough about
composing
or arranging or anything like that. I wish I knew more. I wish I knew more harmony, because actually I love harmony. When I hear good harmonically arranged things, I get gorgeous. You know, you hear a chord and who can think of a chord like that? It's gorgeous, you know. And I wish I'd done more at the time. But I suppose I've been lazy as the years have gone by. But the one thing I've tried to keep the drumming to a certain standard. But I tell you what has surprised me in 50 years, and I think in many ways, our show that we did here in Germany, Super Drumming, did a lot to bring young people to drumming.
Yeah.
Because now there are drummers everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're very good.
This is what I wanted also to speak about, but you said it. You are the founder and the inventor of the super drumming concept, which was you playing with a lot of famous drummers like Billy Cobham, Ian Pace, Cozy Powell, a lot of others, and a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
And as you said, this brought. And it's on. You can get it on DVD. You can get it on the YouTube. Please watch it, because this is the best drum show you can get in these times.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, you are not a composer, but I know that you are in the drummers poll on a very high position. I don't know on what position, but
I don't know either. I wish I did.
If you're on the drummers poll and the best drummers, world drummers, and you're under the top 10. I think this is it.
Well, there was a time when I came. I mean, you don't see my name in the poll so much now, because there's so many new names, and they're younger names. The young people know them more than they know me. But there was a time. I think it might have been 1970, when in the Melody Maker, which had good music polls, in the rock drummers of the world, Ginger was #1, and me and Carl Palmer were #2 equal. That's cool. The highest I ever. That's the highest I ever got.
That's really cool. Yes.
Yeah. But that, you know why? I think I was doing very much then. I was with Eddie as the York of Hardin and York. So people saw the name. They said, "Oh, York, yeah, he plays the drums," you know. So we were doing a lot.
Yeah.
We'd been on TV. I'd been with Spencer Davis and so on. So we were. You might say my name was hot then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So therefore, more people voted for me.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, as the years go by, you fade a little bit into the background unless you're doing things which are really in front of the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that never matters to me.
As we knew before, and we have lots of hours of funny stories, and you know them all. I love that funny stories about the Queen and Gene Connery and all that stuff that you told me. So tell us one small funny tour bus secret, or something about the band or about you. Or what you have, what you want to say to your fans, because there were so much cool stories. I know.
Oh yeah, well that's it's not
small,
so
funny
easy.
one.
There's incidents that happen, little things which you remember, and they're somehow funny. And I remember a time, it's no secret now, everybody knows that in the years when we were on the road in the 60s, there was quite a lot of smoking of drugs going on.
Yeah.
Now, I never smoked, but I think maybe a couple of occasions I tried. It didn't do anything very much for me, and therefore I didn't bother, I have to say. And a couple of times people gave me hash cakes and I didn't know what they were, so I ate them, and you know, it had a little effect, but it never really appealed to me, that kind of thing. But it's no secret, you know, Steve was a guy who was with traffic and so on. They smoked a lot, and when he was with us, there were a couple of times, I think, when he was kind of in his own world, let's say. And I remember one night on the Rolling Stones tour, a lot of funny things happened on the Rolling Stones tour, 1965, but Steve used to do a slow song, which is actually an old standard, called Georgia. And one night he started to play this on the piano, and he played a little introduction, a few bars. Then he went into the first 8 bars, Georgia, Georgia, yeah, a song of you, whatever, there's an old sweet song, says Georgia on my mind. And then the song goes on, of course, hopefully for another 3 minutes. But somehow his brain took a little shortcut and he sang the first 8 bars and went straight to the end. So, on my mind, just an old sweet song, there's Georgia on my mind, and stopped. So it lasted about 18 seconds. And we were all, everybody was very surprised. You know, I've never heard a song so short.
This is maybe the shortest version of
I
Georgia
think so.
by Ray Charles. Ray Charles
just 8 bars. Just cool. An intro, 8 bars and a coda.
So, Pete, at last, some words to your fans, and we wish you a lot of great success, and we see us on the tour with the Spencer Davis Group and special guest also Eddie Hardin, and we will also see Hardin and York in this concert, which is really
2 for the price of 1.
Some last words to your fans, please.
Well, I'd like to say to the fans who stuck with us all through the years, and the ones who remain faithful today, and I know there's quite a lot of them, that although we don't know everybody personally and we've never met, we're very grateful to the fans. And I must say, I've always liked to meet the fans myself. When people come up, sometimes they even come up in the street, or you might be walking along and suddenly some guy dressed like a bank manager comes and says, "It's Pete York, huh?" And, you know, I said, "Yes, it's me." He said, "Oh, I'm a big fan," starts talking about the old days. I love that. I think that's great. It never bothers me, never did worry me. I was just always grateful, because the one thing is, I always remembered my heroes. Again, I get back to my heroes. Somebody asked the same question of Louis Armstrong, and Louis Armstrong said, "I always try to give my best, and if people want to meet me and talk to me and get an autograph, I'm always there at the end of the show, because it may be they drove 200 miles to come to my show, and this may be the only time in their life they ever get to see me." And he said, I owe them the courtesy of saying hello.
Understand. Great last word.
And this was a guy, you know,
he gave
wonderful
everything.
Man. He gave everything. And at the end of his shows, I remember people telling me they went to shows in England. At the end, there would be queues to go backstage to go to the dressing room, and he would stay there until he'd seen everybody. He never sent anybody away. Now there's a lot of stars today. They never do that. Maybe they can't because there's too many fans. But you know what I mean. It was in that time at least, it was a warm business. It was almost a family business. There weren't that many of us as there are today. Nowadays, you know, in those days you could say, "Okay, who were your drummer friends?" And I'd say, "Well, there's so-and-so and so-and-so." And there's maybe 20, 30, 40 guys on the scene. Now there's 500 drummers for every 20 of the old days. You know, it's just amazing. So that's what I'd like to say. I'd just like to say thanks for sticking with us, and stick with us as far as they can. And I promise you, one thing I promise myself is that when I feel I'm not doing it well enough, that's when I'll stop. When I think I can't do it well, or that the people might be disappointed, I'll stop.
But I can tell you he looks great, and we will have great shows with Spencer Davis.
Hope so,
Thank you very much, Pete.
Thank you, Alex.